Hello everybody and welcome to the sample tutorial for my channel, Alex and Accents. On my channel, I break down videos of native speakers with a British pronunciation and comment on them in detail. We usually look at sounds, rhythm, connected speech and intonation so that you can shadow those pieces with full confidence. See for yourself. Today we're looking at Natalie Dormer, who's giving an interview about the first times in her career. First, let's give it a listen.
I genuinely can't remember the first time I was recognised in the street, but it's happening increasingly now these days.
Let's begin by looking at the sounds and the stressed syllables. I genuinely can't remember. So we have gen, can't, mem. In genuinely and remember, we have the same vowel sound that I call the egg vowel. You might know it as the dress vowel. So the tongue is at the front and the back is raised. Well, the way it looks depends on the surrounding consonants, and if you look at genuinely, you can see a little smile. If you look at remember, there's barely any time to smile, but the essence about the tongue stays the same. You won't open the jaw too much for it, so it should not become genuinely, yeah? Just a little bit, genuinely, and remember. It's also a very short sound, so you should not stretch it, not like genuinely remember, but genuinely remember. You will rely on the consonants. In the word genuinely, an interesting detail could be that between you and in, genuine, we get this subtle linking w. So it's just to help us to transition from one vowel to the next smoothly. You shouldn't emphasize it. It should not become genuinely, yeah? But in essence, you engage your lips for a little bit. Genuine, genuinely. And then you finish this common ending for adverbs. You finish with li, where we have a light L. That means you use just the tip of your tongue on the alveolar ridge. The body of the tongue and the sides of the tongue are lowered, l. Keeping some room between the teeth might help. And then you flip it for the happy vowel. So it's quite a high and tense sound, e. So we get li. It happens very quickly, so you might not see it in Natalie's interpretation, but this is what technically happens. I genuinely can't remember. So moving on to the next word, it's can't. And the first thing to note there is that k is energetic and aspirated. So make sure you have a very clear plosion for k. And then you leave a little out breath after it. Ka. I genuinely can't remember. So the vowel sound there is what I call the ka vowel. And normally, so the tongue is quite low. You can think about it as moving the tip and the front of the tongue back and down a bit and basically hiding it behind the lower gums. Ah. The mouth will usually be relaxed and the lips might even be slightly rounded and the jaw drops a little, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. If you look at Natalie's mouth, she has her mouth slightly rounded, ka, yeah? And you can still see her tongue, but, well, typically the tongue will be less visible. So, ka. If you keep the tongue too frontal or too high, the sound will change, like ka. Yeah, this is not deep enough. Ka. That's what we're after. And again, keeping the mouth slightly rounded and relaxed will help. Ka. I genuinely can't remember. You can notice that she doesn't say the T at the end of can't, yeah? She uses a glottal stop instead. So sometimes we have a glottal stop after n, for example, like in this case, and that means you finish with the tip of the tongue on the alveolar ridge like for n, but then you pause the air and everything and the sound very abruptly. So you should not finish smoothly like I genuinely can't remember. This can't is very smooth. We need to keep it abrupt. I genuinely can't can't. But be careful not to distort the quality of the vowel sound. It should not become short like can, yeah, but can't. You give it its articulation and time, and then you finish abruptly once you say no. I know it's a lot to take in, so give it time. I genuinely can't remember. Then moving on to remember, the first syllable is very relaxed and unstressed, re. Don't soften it. And then in the main syllable, in the stressed syllable, we have the egg vowel again. So you want to make sure that even though you won't see your tongue very well, that it's still at the front. Member, not member, me. Don't like pull it back to say me. It's right here. Remember. Even though your lips are going to be quite closed most of the time because of m, you can still have a little smile wandering around your lips. Mem. And the ending of remember is very important. You don't want to keep your mouth closed for it because then you won't know what's happening with the tongue. So you want to make sure that your jaw, your tongue and your lips are relaxed. Let me play it.
Can't remember.
Ba. So a good indicator could be keeping the tip of the tongue at the lower teeth, not letting it curl up like remember, yeah, but b, and thinking about a very lazy sound, not trying to say or but just like letting it go and letting it relax in the center. Remember. So in terms of intonation, we start a bit lower on I because it's unstressed, and then we jump up on genuinely, the first stressed syllable. And after that, we basically go down the stairs. Let's give it a listen.
I genuinely can't remember.
I genuinely can't remember. The notes don't have to be exact because everyone has a different voice, a different timbre, different voice range, and it's just important that you try to follow the same pattern. So here the pattern is starting a bit lower on I, jumping up on gen, and then going down on can't and mem. I genuinely can't remember. I genuinely can't remember. Notice how remember gets a little emphasis because it's the last important thought of this line, and so mem is a bit higher and ba is a bit lower. That's what's perceived as a fall.
Can't remember.
Remember, right? Or it could be a bit higher. Remember. I genuinely can't remember. So the second line goes, the first time I was recognized in the street. And we'll talk about intonation in a bit. You can notice that it's pretty flat and low. Let's begin by discussing the sounds and connected speech because it's basically all linked like one huge word. So the very first word is the, and it's unstressed and it's very neutral. It's got the schwa sound, and I'd like you to make sure that the back of your tongue is not raised, because even if you say it very quickly but the back of the tongue is raised, it's going to come out as the. You hear? So that's because the tongue is raised like this, the. So what you want to do is try to feel that the back of the tongue is low and it's not touching the top teeth. So it's not there, it's the. And once you say it, the first, you carry on to the following word very quickly, but you try to eliminate that factor of sounding like there by lowering the back of the tongue. So the first time. You carry on to first very quickly, and there the stressed syllable has the bird vowel, which is basically like the long schwa. So the tongue will be flat in the center and the tip would be at the lower teeth. Not curled up like first, not bunched up like first, but flat. First. It's not too long, so you rely on the consonants f and s, but you give it a bit of time still and relax the lips and the jaw. First. Should not be f. Don't tense up the lips, don't push them forward. the first time, the first time. On the border, first time are linked, and the first T in first just falls out. There's no T. So you just have one T in time. The first time, the first time. Then she carries on again, connecting time I. Yeah, time I was, time I was. So on the border, we get this syllable my, time I, time I. And both time and I have the diphthong fine, I call it fine, and it starts pretty low in the center. So you should not try to open your mouth like time I, but rather relax it and let the tongue start a bit lower. Ta, ta, not ta, 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 time I, time I. The first time I was recognized in the street. So then we carry on to was, and it's unstressed, right? It's not one of the stressed syllables. And that means you should not say was with an o. It should not be the first time I was recognized, yeah? But the first time I was recognized. So this I was is very neutral and quick, and was will use a schwa, meaning that you don't need to articulate was, right? You don't need to pull the tongue back or down for or. You try to keep it more central and neutral for So basically, I usually say just think about saying w and z without articulating the vowel per se. So was the first time I was recognized, right? Very neutral. The word recognize, so we have the next stress syllable, rec, there, right? And it's got the same egg vowel that we discussed in the first line. After saying r, try to push the tongue forward a bit, not leaving it back like re, recognized, but re. It might be tricky, but try to do it. And don't rush to smile for it, because first you need your lips to say r, recognized, recognized. Normally, the word recognized has a g, so it's going to be recognized, but she just forgets about it. She leaves it out and she goes recognized, recognized. I personally struggle to repeat that because I'm used to saying recognized, but she goes recognized, recognized. So that's, well, if you don't want to repeat that, you can say it properly with g. Recognized, recognized. And in the ending, I has the same diphthong, which is going to be quite relaxed and central, yeah? Time, my, recognized, nized. But it's unstressed, so it's very quick. The first time I was recognized, the first time I was recognized in the street. Then in the is a very common combination, obviously, those prepositions and the articles. So we always say in the, on the, down there, on that, and so on. So what happens there is assimilation. Firstly, n, that's normally on the alveolar ridge, moves to the teeth. So rather than saying in, we'd say in, and touch the teeth. In the. And then, I just said it in another combination, and then. You basically lose the. You don't have to make effort to articulate it well, like in the, yeah, but in the. So you simply hold this n on the teeth for a little bit longer, in the. That way you won't confuse it with inner, yeah, in a street, in the street, in the street. So you hold it for a bit. And that can be applied to all the other phrases that I mentioned, on there, down there, and then, and so on. It doesn't mean that sometimes we can't say it more clearly and separate it in the, we can say it, but very often in the flow of speech, this is what happens. In the. Once again, keep the neutral, not in the street, the, but in the street. In the street. Super quick and neutral. Then we have the word street, and a very common assimilation there would be saying street, or some people say street, so blending it all and replacing t with ch because it's closer to r. But in fact, Natalie doesn't do that. She says more like a clean standard way of saying it, street, street, with the t. Let's give it a quick listen.
Recognizing the street, but
street, street. But what she does do at the end is a glottal stop, and she doesn't say the T, she just finishes in this position for the long E sound, which is, by the way, very tense and smiley. E, 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 street, street. And she stops the air and everything, and that's it. That's the end of the word. Street, street, street. Right? There's no problem saying the T at the end, of course, and it might be your preference. It's completely fine. In the street, in the street. So in terms of intonation, the second line is pretty flat compared to the first one. Let's give it a listen.
The first time I was recognizing the street,
but still, the stressed syllables are going to be brought out. So the first time I was recognizing the street, the first time I was recognizing the street. You notice that the stressed syllables first, rec, and street are brought out and they're pronounced slightly higher, even though the difference is going to be very small. The first time I was recognizing the street. So try to keep it more or less in the same range, but bring out the stressed syllables very well. The first time I was recognizing the street. And you can take a slower pace. You don't have to keep up with her tempo, but the relative speed of the stressed syllables against the unstressed syllables is going to be different. So you pronounce the unstressed syllables relatively faster. The first time I was recognizing the street. I genuinely can't remember the first time I was recognizing the street. Let's carry on to the next line.
But it's happening increasingly.
So she begins with this hesitation phrase, but and again she uses a glottal stop between but and so basically but is a short quick sound in the center. The tongue is in the center, and then you don't move the tongue anywhere to stop the sound. You simply, well, it's not that simple, but you use the vocal folds to stop the air, like you have to finish very abruptly, but, and then you pick up and you say but a bit lower, but, it's happening increasingly. The word it's, even though it's unstressed, it's important that you begin with a very relaxed mouth and tongue. It's, not it's. So don't hide the tongue behind the teeth. For the kit vowel, it has to be a little bit lower than the top teeth. But right under them, basically. It's. Then the word happening, well, unfortunately we can't see her mouth for this because they show images of her photo shoot, but we know that she opens it very wide. Ha, ha, ha. The tongue has to be at the front and a little bit above the lower teeth. Pretty spread. The mouth is very widely open, so the lips are spread, the jaw is dropped. Ha, ha, ha. And the first sound is just a very light out breath. Make sure that you don't use your tongue, the back of your tongue, to say it. It should not be ha, ha, but ha, ha, ha. Happening, happening. Then it's a very quick sound as well, even though it's so open. And then she does not say that word in 3 syllables like happening, but more like in 2 syllables, happening, happening. So once you say hap, you keep the mouth closed and then you carry on with n. Happening, happening. And for the second syllable there, again we have the kit vowel that we just saw in it's, but between n and ng. So again, you need to drop the jaw and let the tongue go down a bit. Ning, ning. And for the ending, you use the back of your tongue connected with a soft palate to say ng. Happening, happening, happening. And then in the next word, we also have plenty of opportunities to practice the sound in the word increasingly. It's probably a perfect example for practicing switching between the kit vowel and the key vowel or the happy vowel. So the main difference between them is the position of the tongue. For the key vowel, so the long E, the tense E, your tongue is very high and it's pressing into the top side teeth. You smile a lot. E, E. You may have some room between the teeth because it makes it easier to position the tongue like that. E, E. For the kit vowel, the tongue is more relaxed, so it's just touching the side top teeth a little bit. Your mouth is not that spread, your jaw drops a little. E, E, E. E, 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 E. So in increasingly, we have this interchange between I and E. And at the end, the happy vowel is like the unstressed key vowel, so it's the same idea. Li, li. And the same ending we already had in genuinely. So, if you look at the word increasingly in the dictionary, you'll probably see that it has n, increasingly. But in real life, in fast speech, it will probably get assimilated before the following k sound. So that means we're not going to use the tip of the tongue to say n, but rather the back of the tongue to say because it's closer to the following k. So it's probably going to sound as increasingly. So take it slow and try to control the position of the tongue. You can think about this movement for I and this movement for E. Increasingly, but it's happening increasingly now these days. In terms of intonation, let's give it a listen.
But it's happening increasingly.
But it's happening increasingly. So but is a bit higher than is just like a hesitation pause. But it's happening increasingly. So ha and crease are stressed syllables, and then you go up on increasingly, but it's happening increasingly, but it's happening increasingly.
Now these days.
So the final line also begins with this hesitation sound, but a different one, just a schwa, So again, the tongue is in the center, very relaxed, everything is relaxed. Now these days. And then this final line, a very short one, but very quick and rhythmical. Now these days, now these days. Very low as well, right? So the stressed syllables now and days are going to have diphthongs. Now is a very open frontal sound that begins basically like, almost like the cat vowel, So the tongue is quite high and frontal, the mouth is spread, na, 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 now, now. It should not be now, 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 but now, now. You need to open up and show your tongue. Now, these days. And days has the day diphthong, what I call it. The tongue is at the front, you smile and you drop the jaw. Da, da, day, day, day. And the tongue moves a bit lower and then up for E, A, day, day. And in the middle we have this unstressed word which is less brought out for the sake of rhythm. Now these days, now these days, right? But still these has the key vowel and it should not be lost. It shouldn't become now this days, yeah, or now these days. So it should still be these. Try to make sure your tongue it stays high after the, now these days, now these days. If you speed up and it makes you lose certain sounds, it means that you need to take a slower tempo, because in this kind of work, accuracy comes before speed. You don't want to be saying some gibberish, but quickly. You want to be clear and understood and to control every movement that your organs of speech are making. So let's put it all together and try to imitate it. So we've got I genuinely can't remember the first time I was recognized in the street, but it's happening increasingly now these days. I genuinely can't remember the first time I was recognized in the street, but it's happening increasingly now these days. I genuinely can't remember the first time I was recognized in the street, but it's happening increasingly now these days. I genuinely can't remember the first time I was recognized in the street, but it's happening increasingly now these days.